This is Democracy Watch. Mark, we have major news as it relates to gerrymandering, redrawing maps, which you and I have been covering ad nauseum here. That news comes in North Carolina. Can you explain what just happened in federal court?
Yeah, so the court in North Carolina hearing the challenge to the new map ruled to uphold the new map on the basis of the 2026 cycle. So though the case can continue out in the future, for 2026, we are going to have the redrawn maps, which is really disappointing. Look, all I can tell you is that we fought hard, and I've said this to you before, Brian, I've said this to your audience. All I can promise people is that where we have a case to be brought, where we think there is a good argument that we can protect people's voting rights, that we can ensure lawful redistricting, we are going to fight hard, and we're going to fight with everything we have. And we're not giving up on North Carolina. We'll keep going forward. But for 2026, we are going to have the gerrymandered maps that the legislature put in place.
So I'm assuming here, it sounds like the judge relied on the Purcell doctrine. Is that correct? This idea that we were too close to the election to make any changes to the existing map?
So there's a few things. The judge, I think, was not convinced that based on the abbreviated record that we were able to make, in the short time period, that we had proven that this was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander. I think Purcell obviously is always lurking in this, as is the fact that the Supreme Court, frankly, let's just be honest, is sitting on a major case. Now, the judge didn't cite that, just to be clear, but I think, all of these cases right now are everyone's
precarious.
got one eye on the page in front of
Right.
them and one eye on what the U.S. Supreme Court may say in that Louisiana case that we're all waiting on.
So you had mentioned the Supreme Court, Mark, and you were talking about Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. That's the Calais case down from Louisiana. But there's another case pending in front of the Supreme Court that you and your team had also been litigating, and that was the new maps in Texas. So can you talk about where that case stands right now?
Yeah, so look, we won a huge case in Texas around racial gerrymandering, actually the same claims that we brought in North Carolina, different facts, but same claims. And the state of Texas ran to the U.S. Supreme Court. That is fully briefed. We are at this point awaiting a decision from the Supreme Court. And, look, if we win that, that could, in theory, open up avenues in other states, perhaps even on an outside chance in North Carolina, though I wouldn't count on that in North Carolina. But that is right now probably the single most impactful case because it involves 5 seats that is pending before the Supreme Court around redistricting. The Calais case will have more long-range impacts because it involves the Voting Rights Act, and that'll affect a whole bunch of states in the Deep South. But that Texas case, we are awaiting any day now, a decision there.
And of course, we'll bring that to you as soon as we have any updates. And to that end, for those who are looking to support the invaluable work that Mark is doing, not just in the media space where his voice could not be more important, but also in the courts where he's arguing these cases, his firm is bringing these cases. A small step that we can all take to show some support for that work is to sign up for Democracy Docket. So I'm going to put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. If you are not yet signed up, please go ahead and sign up.
And I got to tell you, it's been hard to focus. I've got a Supreme Court argument on December 9th in a campaign finance election case. And it's been hard to stay focused, though I have to, because you have the Calais case in the Supreme Court. You've got the Texas case on an emergency basis in the Supreme Court. You've got the North Carolina case that was just decided. But that's, before you get to Wisconsin, where my law firm just won a procedural victory, where that case will now go before a 3-judge trial court in Dane County. We've got, what's still happening in Virginia. We've got, redistricting challenges that the other side has filed against California, which is not getting a lot of attention, but that has been set for hearing in December. And look, you and I have talked about this. I think that if we see Indiana come back into session in mid December, as they are saying they will, then all eyes are going to turn back to, the other states, Illinois, Maryland on the Democratic side, plus Florida. So there's a lot going on around redistricting. And I say this because on any given day, you're going to get good news, you're going to get bad news. You're going to get some bad news in North Carolina. We had some good news in Texas. Like, don't get too caught up in one or the other, because there's just a lot of seats that are going to play out in these cases throughout the month of December, through the holidays, and probably into the beginning of next year.
And when can we assume that everything is settled? Like,
Uh,
what's the latest point at which these court cases can go on before we know, okay, this is what it's going to look like for 2026?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and I wish I could tell you there was one national answer. But you mentioned the Purcell Doctrine earlier. What that says is that courts cannot change maps or election rules too close to the election. Now, what too close to the election means is anybody's guess, right? Like the Supreme Court has not been crystal clear about
Right.
this. They keep moving these dates. And some of it depends on the state, right? So a state that has, let's say, a March primary is going to be a different timetable than, for example, a state that has an August primary, right? Because like what too close means is going to necessarily depend on, where you are in that progression of dates. So I think it's fair to say that once we get into the full swing of the spring, then it's probably too late everywhere, right? Because for redistricting, not for voting cases, but for redistricting, because primaries, the latest primaries you're going to have are going to really be, the very latest they could be is August, but most states have their primaries in, May, June, July at the latest. And so, that's going to be where you have to start counting back from. What's interesting, Brian, is in the Calais case specifically, a lot of us said this was argued, re-argued, and rehearing early in the term, and we could get a decision in January, and that would leave time for Republicans to be involved in mischief if it goes against us. On the other hand, however, these important cases are oftentimes decided in June, and the difference between January and June could be a world of difference.
You had mentioned Indiana, and the reality is that we are in the midst of watching the Trump administration pressure Indiana Republicans into reopening this special legislative session so that they can yet again consider redrawing their maps. That effort had failed this past month, but the administration, J.D. Vance, continues to put a lot of pressure on these Indiana Republicans. There was a moment on Thanksgiving Day that I want to get your reaction to. On Thanksgiving Day, Trump took to Truth Social and decided to attack Governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, and he wrote, quote, "The seriously retarded governor of Minnesota, Tim Walz, does nothing either through fear, incompetence, or both," and he's talking about Somalian gangs roving the streets looking for prey. That was met with a response from an Indiana Republican who had taken to Facebook, and he wrote the following: "Many of you have asked my position on redistricting. I have been an unapologetic advocate for people with intellectual disabilities since the birth of my second daughter. Those of you who don't know me or my family might not know that my daughter has Down syndrome. This is not the first time our president has used these insulting and derogatory references, and his choices of words have consequences. I will be voting no on redistricting. Perhaps he can use the next 10 months to convince voters that his policies and behavior deserve a congressional majority." So I want to get your reaction to what we saw play out on Thanksgiving Day.
First of all, that is who Donald Trump is. So, I kudos, I guess, to the Republican who, as he said, he has heard Donald Trump say this for years. And I'm not sure why this one instance is any different than the other slurs he's used. And by the way, the other slurs he's used against not just people with mental disabilities, people with physical disabilities, he's mocked. He, of course, is constantly bad mouthing and lying about different racial and ethnic and religious groups. So this is who Donald Trump is. So that's my first reaction. The second is that, it would be nice if Republicans, were standing up for vulnerable people in our community, even if they themselves were not affected by those vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
It would be nice if Republicans had just general decency and opposed Donald Trump on those grounds, even if it didn't affect them, or someone close to them. And then finally, the same I'd say about democracy. Like, Republicans in Indiana should stand up against Donald Trump, because what Donald Trump is trying to do in Indiana is fundamentally undemocratic. So it's a long way of saying I'm glad that this particular Republican, who I don't know, found a reason to do the right thing. It's never too late to do the right thing, and I guess there's never a wrong reason to do the right thing. But we need more Republicans who are just willing to do the right thing, period, without there having to be a particular event that is near and dear to their heart,
Right.
but rather just speaks to what we expect from a president and what we expect from a party that supports the president.
Perfectly put. I would also add that, he did this on Thanksgiving Day. And for the last 10, 20 years, we have watched Republicans, clutch their pearls that the radical leftist, Marxist, communist Democrats didn't appreciate the sacrosanctity of the holidays, that we've been waging this war on Christmas, this war on the holidays. And now Republicans have full control of government. They've got the House, the Senate, the White House, the Supreme Court. They've got everything. And so you would think that in this moment, they would be able to fully appreciate the holidays as they're supposed to be celebrated, which I would assume would be spending time with family, the traditional family values, whatever it may be. And instead, you've got the leader of the Republican Party logging onto Twitter on Thanksgiving evening when the rest of us are celebrating Thanksgiving, sitting down with our families, enjoying dinner, and spending quality time with people we love. And he's just out there calling random governors of random blue states retarded because they're not adhering to whatever his political agenda is. And so just the irony of the fact that finally you have the opportunity to truly appreciate and put into effect, this sacrosanct moment of the calendar year, and instead you just waste it, basically just attacking your political foes.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is who Donald Trump is. There is no one in the Republican Party who does not know that Donald Trump is the kind of person that on Thanksgiving makes slurs.
Yeah.
He's the kind of person who says at a funeral that he does not wish well of his enemies. This is a guy who is just a indecent human being without any sense of right and wrong. We oftentimes think that we want our presidents to grow in office. We want them to become bigger than themselves and represent the best of America. We don't even try to expect that of Donald Trump. Yeah. His supporters don't even try to expect that of Donald Trump. We have accepted, and they have accepted, a diminished presidency because this pathetic little man, this pathetic, broken old man is who he is, and they are unwilling to hold him to the standard that we normally hold presidents to.
We'll leave it there. That's the perfect place to leave off. Again, for those who are watching right now, if you'd like to support Mark's work, and we've heard a little bit about what that work is, whether it's, against these Republican gerrymanders in Texas, in North Carolina, wherever it may be across the country, a small step we can all take to show that support is to sign up for Democracy Docket. So I'm going to put that link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I would also note that while he and his team are covering this stuff, this has gone completely unnoticed by legacy media. There is no coverage of what's happening on a day-to-day basis on these redistricting fights. So again, if you're not looking to support him solely for what he's doing in the courts, which is battling for democracy on the front lines, then do it for the fact that he and his team are covering this stuff that, again, is being ignored by legacy media. And of course, if you'd like to see episodes of Democracy Watch, I'm going to put that link on the screen as well. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.